All right. And here we go. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our last Monday class of Mod 2, DES109, Graphic Design 1. This is week 4. So this is our second to last session. Our last session will actually be tomorrow. So we're going to go over, or do a little quick review. We'll go over to this week's objectives. We'll do some critiques of some of the submissions that we got from last week, the assignment. And if we have a little bit of extra time, I'll maybe briefly go over the discussion and the assignment assessment stuff for this coming week, because it can get a little confusing since it's kind of conjoined with the assignment from last week, and then the assignment and the assessment from this week are kind of, put together too. So maybe I'll have a little bit of time at the end and we'll be able to go over that. So, boo-hoo. Beth apparently liked these lectures, which is, that's good. All right, well, let us get going with the video, or stopping the video. There we go. Oh, come on, there we go. Okay, so today, like I said, we're in week 4. We've gone through 1, 2, and 3, where we've talked a little bit about what design is, or what graphic design actually is, and how it is essentially a message that is being provided or communicated to a specific audience with a combination of text, typography, and imagery. We talked about the design principles and Gestalt theory, grouping things together, the elements of design and how those work together. And then we did several assignments working with those kinds of things, trying to put the elements and the principles together to create a composition. We've learned how to critique our own work and to not only critique our design process, but learn how to communicate that to a potential employer or our client. And then, there we go. And then last week, we actually were discussing a little bit about finding creativity and inspiration, and how to find it when you are kind of stale, which is something that happens very, very frequently in the industry. It's hard to be creative all the time. And it's really, it's really important to kind of surround yourself with people that you can bounce ideas off of, as well as resources that you can actually kind of dip into when you need them. And then we started last week on the poster for the designers, and we also did a little bit of reading and a little bit of work on some social media ads, because that is really kind of becoming a significant part of this field, where we're learning how to incorporate digital media into our everyday life. It's not, it's actually fairly strange or uncommon when you find out that an organization, a company, doesn't have a Facebook page or a Twitter page. It's not as unusual to find out that they maybe only have one social media account, but it is very interesting when you find out that someone doesn't have some kind of online presence. And then this week, speaking of online presence, we're going to be talking about the future of design and your future of design, and developing your online presence. We're going to be, as the assignment goes, we're going to be creating our online portfolio on Behance, which is a very significant portfolio in the design community. There are search engines for jobs, there are search engines for artists, and the assessment for this week is actually going to be your revisions from week 3's assignment. So you'll take the feedback that I provide and you'll actually use that for the assessment, and then upload that to your online portfolio. So essentially you're going to be doing your assessment first and then creating the portfolio. And we've got some chit chat over here, so let me just make sure that I catch up here. Just want to make sure. Oh, thank you very much, Beth. I'm glad you really enjoyed the class, and thank you for the compliment. It's a learning curve for me as well. So it's nice to hear when some of my students really enjoy it. And yeah, it seems like a lot of people had a tricky week. I had a tricky weekend in terms of trying to find time to even get back on my email. So I think it was the just kind of the time. Maybe it was daylight savings. That's what I'm going to blame it on daylight savings this week. And well, happy birthday, Lyric. We had a birthday last week too. Yes, Lyric, if you want to ask me that question about Behance right off the bat, be my guest. If you'd like to turn on your microphone instead of typing it, if it's a long question, that's fine. That's up to you. Or maybe we're just going to type. Actually, Lyric, I actually saw your email and I responded just a few minutes ago. That's not a problem if you don't want to speak. That's fine. So Lyric, for those of you watching, is asking why you need to make a portfolio on Behance when there's one that's already on Google Sites. I actually had responded in my email. Could you let me know what course it was that you already made the Google site on or for? Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of information as to why we would be doing a repeat portfolio. Us as instructors here at IU, DES109. Okay, I'll have to look into that. It might be because I think that's a computer science course, so the program would be slightly different. That may be why. So, and because Behance is really a design portfolio site, so that might actually explain it. Well, what I was mentioning before was as an IU instructor, we're provided the curriculum and the media, and then as instructors, we're given the flexibility to decide how we want to present it and teach it, and then if there's anything that we want to supplement. So that's, that I unfortunately don't have the decision whether or not to include that type. We're given the media, we're given the assignments, the assessments, that kind of thing. But I'll make sure to bring up your concern to the dean, and maybe there's some overlap that shouldn't be there in the program, and it's also possible that there were two completely different programs, and that's why. So that one maybe would be a professional portfolio, and then this one would be a professional design portfolio. So, but I'll definitely look into that. It's I promise, Lyra, if you watch the demo from tomorrow, it's really not difficult, and there's a lot of great information on Behance for designers specifically. So that might be it. We have a couple that are saying that the Google site that they're talking about, they think was from DES109, the Psychology of Motivation. That was actually probably one of the first classes you guys took. Is that right? In the program? Okay, yeah, so that might be why. I think that might be one of those courses that like lots of people from the different programs take, so it's kind of like an overlap. And then this would be geared more towards design. So, but I will definitely, like I said, I'll definitely make sure I inquire on that. So moving right along, and absolutely, Lyric, since this is your first session in here, absolutely jump in on that chat whenever you have questions just like that, and I will make sure, because I kind of go back and forth, and I'll make sure I jump over to the chat and I'll get those questions answered or comments or whatever. So just a reminder to make sure that you watch the pre-recorded lecture this week. I don't think I reiterated last week or the week prior, because everyone seemed to be doing a really good job with that. And even last week, I just kind of, last week, just kind of wrapping it up here. This week's has to do with the graphic design process and your digital presence. So it's talking a little bit about building your network and collaborating and that kind of thing. And just a reminder that those lectures, those pre-recorded lectures, are really, the bread and butter, meat and potatoes of your understanding of design and how it works. So, you know, you can carry that information all the way through your program and then beyond into your actual professional work. So here we go. So just kind of, excuse me, going over last week, the grades and the late work last week. Unfortunately, I had kind of a hard time getting to the grades. I know I have a couple of grades, I think, that were from last week that were submitted quite a bit late that I have to get to, but everything else is going to be done timely this week. Excuse me. And I will accept late submissions from last week's assignment up until this coming Thursday at noon to be able to get those revisions in time for the assessment this week, because this week's assessment is based on revisions from week 3's assignment. So you need to have that completed, graded and complete in order to be able to do this week's assessment. I will be doing critiques today, Tuesday, tomorrow, if we have time. Thursday, if anybody wants me to critique anything. So far, I haven't had any requests, but I am definitely available Thursday during the multi-session. And then if you had submitted on time last week, you wanted to make revisions before the assessment, that's fine, but I don't think that we're going to have many requests for that. But the assessment number 3, the social media ads, I will take up until the end of this week. It's just going to have a little bit of a late deduction, but late deduction on a project is better than a 0. So if you haven't submitted that yet, make sure to get that in. And let's see, we do have some questions here. Get grade, revise, do assessment, then assignment. Yes, Lyric, that is the correct order. Lyric was asking, so for week 3's assignment, you will be receiving the feedback and the grade from that assignment. You'll make revisions to that assignment with my feedback, and that will be for the assessment for this week 4 assessment. And then your assignment is actually uploading that assessment to the portfolio that you're creating, so it kind of makes sense to do it in that order. You're more than welcome to do the assignment first and create the portfolio, and then that would be the last thing you have to do, is just upload it. That's, you know, whatever you have time to do this week. And yes, it can be kind of confusing, Lyric, to have multiple sites. I'll end up showing in my demo tomorrow. I have a couple of different ones simply for redundancy's sake. Mainly because I have had instances where one site happened to go down while I was interviewing, and I was able to provide another link for a completely different site. So that was actually really helpful. And the 2 sites that I work with are both very common, very popular. And that is, excuse me, it is completely up to you how you want to go about doing that. If you would prefer to just have the one, that's up to you. Both of my sites have exactly the exact same amount of, the exact same information. They're set up slightly different, but they're basically the same information. I kind of organize it the same way. And then I have a Facebook page and a Twitter. I do have a couple of other things, but that way, you know, if someone is not comfortable using, Behance, and they want to take a look at the information on Facebook because they're always on Facebook, then they can do that. And so far that has served me well, but that doesn't necessarily need to be, you know, what you do. That's up to you. So we have week 4, our learning objectives. Oh, goodness gracious, what's going on here? Why is this not clicking forward? There we go. We're going to be using graphic design tool sets to edit and compose graphics for the professional portfolio presentation. In other words, we are going to be making revisions to create, for the poster, to create a professional grade image or layout to upload to your portfolio. We're going to be in the discussion talking about the importance of maintaining that professional graphic design presence online why we should be making sure that we have one and maintaining it can almost be a full-time job right in itself. It's kind of crazy, actually. And then interpreting and applying constructive feedback to revise a professional print design piece. That goes back to the first one where we are going to be working with the feedback to make revisions for your professional layout for your portfolio. And before we move any further, we have our secret question for Monday. What is this? And some of you might know, some of you might be too young. Do any of, oh, Beth knows. Very close, Christina. Furbies, this came before Furbies. This is a popple, and actually they've come out with a revised kind of version of it, but this is actually a picture of the one that I still have. The thing is like 36 years old. So it totally dates me, but that's okay. So for those of you actually that have been making sure that you email me the secret question answers, if for some reason you didn't need points applied last week or extension applied, whatever you had requested, and that extra point or that extension is kind of hanging in the balance, if you don't need it for this week's project either, I'll end up just going through the grades and I'll apply it where I need to. So, oh yeah, Christina, they're wicked cute. You fold them in and you can make a little ball out of them. But all right, so that's the one toy that I don't allow my kids to play with because it's too old. It's too old and it reminds me of my childhood. So, all right, let's go through. Oh, you were living overseas in the 80s? Whereabouts? Let me do this actually. Christina says she was not stateside in the 80s. Germany and Greece, nice. Army bread. Oh, well, that must have been a little tricky. There we go. Davi says she loved her popple. Yeah, Santa brought 3 original popples for my kids a couple years ago. I'm not really sure how. Yes, it was interesting. No, you're probably actually talking to Christina. Sorry, I'm jumping in on the conversation there. Let's see. Amazon and eBay, Beth, is where I found them. Or where Santa found them. Where am I looking? Announcements. Okay. All right, so just to briefly go over the announcements, we have, I know there were some questions last week about the artboards and the PDFs in Photoshop. For those of you, I know that a lot of you actually noticed the announcement, which was great, and that if you were having any more trouble with those and these tutorials weren't helping, let me know and I can, meet up with you or what have you. And then this hierarchy meme, I just thought was hysterical last week. This wasn't even, oh, come on, there we go. This wasn't even important. I just thought it was really funny because I did exactly what it said I was going to do. And it's just a great example of hierarchy. So I just thought it was really appropriate. And we have our schedule for Rachel this week, our class coach, in the event that anyone needs it. Okay. Oh, Teddy Ruxpin lyric. I remember those. And it's so funny. They actually, I think, are remaking those as well, except I don't know if it's up to an MP3 player now or what, but because obviously the cassettes have kind of gone the way of the dodo. But all right, now let's see. Okay, so we got media. Oh God, I hate when they do this. There we go, readings and videos. This stupid thing just does not load sometimes. Week 3, we are not week 3, week 4, excuse me. We have our pre-recorded lecture, like I mentioned earlier, talking about our design presence and building our network. The lynda.com playlist talks a little bit about the design community and social media as well. and the also on lynda.com, learning Behance. And these are, you know, a little bit more in depth for what I'm going to be going over tomorrow. So if you watch these clips ahead of time before the demo, things will kind of make a lot of sense as you're watching me. And then just a couple of tips here in the one article on how to create, you know, a nicely designed portfolio. And a lot of those things have been kind of preset once you're in there and you kind of notice how things are set up. You can look at other artists as well, other designers, and see how they've set theirs up. And I mean, there are so many different kinds out there. It's a little crazy. So, and I did hear a doorbell. Who did I see come in? Oh, LaShawn came in. Hello, how are you today? Okay, discussion. There we go. All right. Doing all right, doing all right. Hungry as anything, but doing all right. Okay, so we have this week for our discussion prompt, because I will go over that we're doing okay right now. For our discussion prompt, we are talking about the importance of your online presence and our main reasons for maintaining that presence, to stand out from the crowd, to position yourself as an expert, show professional commitment, set expectations, and build connections. And essentially, you want to make sure that you're providing a sense that, number one, you know what you're doing, obviously. That, number two, there's a reason why people looking at your portfolio or looking for a designer, that there's a reason why they want you. You want to show them your work. You want to show them how quickly you can respond, how professional you can be. That, you know, a lot of these things can kind of be encompassed within that particular, in your portfolio. I have spoken with other students in the discussions in previous mods where you might want a slightly different clientele than your classmate might. Maybe your classmate really kind of wants a more quote unquote high-end customer, so they're going to be putting something together that's maybe more structured, more kind of, not mundane, that's the wrong word, a little bit more calm, I guess, reserved, professional kind of look. I'm a little bit more, I work in a screen print shop. That's my day job. I currently am wearing a pair of ripped jeans and a leopard print t-shirt. That's more my speed, and not that I can't handle the quote unquote professional corporate kind of clientele, because there are absolutely plenty of instances where I have that, but I'm more comfortable talking with an individual that is relaxed, that is not afraid to curse in front of me, that, you know, it's a slightly different clientele. And that is typically kind of what I'm trying to draw in. And neither one of those portfolios, is nothing wrong with either of them. It is simply a matter of style, and it's simply a matter of what kind of audience I'm trying to attract. So that is completely up to you how you would like to do that. And, you know, as we were talking a few minutes ago about different portfolios having different sites, maybe you would like to create one site for one audience and another site for another. That's also something that you could maybe consider. So, oh, we've got all sorts of snack foods that we're discussing in the chat over here. You guys are making me hungry again, or continuously. Oh, okay, so we have, as we were kind of talking, I went off on a little tangent there. But our prompt for this week is we're attending a networking event, and we are with several other designers. And as we're talking, one of the designers mentions they're not comfortable sharing their work because they don't have any design experience yet, or design presence. And so what you're going to explain to them is, you know, why it's so important, and maybe what benefits you might explain to them, or maybe stress to them that that's why they're important, how you maybe describe the current professional design world and why that design presence, that digital design presence is becoming more and more important. And how can you make them a little bit more comfortable in terms of kind of getting out there? That can be, you know, it's almost like when you're dating, you put yourself out there and you're afraid you're going to get rejected. It's a very similar kind of thing. It's very personal, and it's a great leap of faith and great leap of courage in order to actually get out there. So, we have a question here. How do you reflect professional commitment on a site when I haven't had any professional work or design commissions? That's a very tricky thing, Lyric. And you know what? Right at the beginning, it really is a matter of kind of taking as much as you can, doing little things on the side. You know, maybe you know someone that is getting married and you can put together some invitations for them, or maybe you there's a fundraiser going on and they're doing a raffle and you offer some design services both for the fundraiser and then maybe for, you know, as part of the a donation or something like that. It takes a little bit of time, Lyric, to kind of build up your portfolio, but once you get started, it's interesting to see how fast it can go. You know, at some point you'll finally get to the point where you're like, yeah, I don't need exposure anymore. I got plenty of exposure. I need to get paid. I need to make sure that I'm paying my bills. But yes, we have some great great suggestions here about doing some volunteer work. I was just explaining about doing, you know, the raffle and offering the design work as one of the raffle items. I've done that before because there are always, you know, instances like that where people are trying to, you know, raise money for this or that, or, you know, and then once you actually get online, you can, I imagine a lot of you probably have a Facebook or a Twitter, you know, just get yourself out there and advertise yourself. People aren't going to know that you're doing that kind of work unless you tell them. And, you know, you guys are still in your design program. So, you know, you want to make sure that, especially when you're done your design program, yes, hey, everybody, I'm here, you know, let me do work for you. There's a decent amount of support for local artists around here. That's awesome. And yes, being a social recluse can make it harder to get out there. That's actually one of the great advantages to social media. So that's a great thing to maybe point out in the discussion this week. You know, you'll have a very particular perspective that you can actually share this week. So it does, like I said, it does take a little time, but you'll be surprised at how well or how easily it can happen once you put yourself out there. So that's the discussion for this week. Talking a little bit about that. Assignment number 4 this week is the Behance setup, is the actual portfolio. The assessment is the revisions to assignment number 3's poster. All right, and then we upload that. And the career integration quiz, which I think it's only 5 questions or so. Just make sure that when you're filling that out that you're very specific to this course, because the rubric, it kind of is trying to make sure that as instructors we know that you guys are not just copying and pasting from other courses, and they don't want generic answers. So if there's something in particular that I've done in this particular course that you liked or that you disliked, specific, you know, you're talking about the design principles and design elements, and you didn't realize that that's how they work together, and that was how you started getting really into the subject matter at the beginning of the course, you know, something like that would absolutely work. If there was a specific reading that kind of spoke to you, perfect. You know, kind of try to mention specific things about the course, because then that's a very easy way to just, you know, to get full points on that particular assignment. So Three. You're right. You're right, Beth. It is 3 questions, not 5. I think I was thinking that it was 5 points. So moving right along, being a designer versus working as a designer. Okay, neither one of them are any better than the other. Something to think about as you are moving forward in your life as a designer is this who you are, or is it just a job to you? And like I said, neither one is any better than the other. There are plenty of people who, being a designer and an artist is who they are. It's how they think. It's how they see things. Then there are other individuals who absolutely love the work, but they like to be able to go home and shut their brain off at the end of the night and not be thinking that way. Either way is absolutely fine. I am more of an artist. I have a friend of mine who works for Stop and Shop in their circular department. He really isn't, but he absolutely loves his work. He loves producing a good product, and he goes home to his wife at the end of the night, and he watches TV and kind of he shuts that off. He keeps that completely separate, and either one is absolutely fine. Either way, what do you need? You need to make sure you have the technical skills. So whether it's Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, Adobe XD, whatever program you happen to need in your particular job. Maybe you're going to start working as a graphic designer and then kind of maybe work towards movie editing or video editing. Who knows? But either way, those technical skills are going to be very important, because if you can't complete the job because your technical skills are lacking, you're going to have a very difficult time actually in the field. Design skills, working with those principles and those elements. All right, and some of that will take a little bit of time. You'll learn a lot more by collaborating with people and by working with even your customers. But that is something to always work at improving. I myself am always doing that. I talk with my 6-year-old constantly because she's a better artist than I ever was at that age, and she sees things from a completely different perspective, and it's wonderful and amazing, and it still teaches me. So it's absolutely something that can grow and develop. And then lastly, the interpersonal and communication skills are super important, not only because you have to communicate to your employer or your client. Maybe there's a little bit of a delay in their project, or maybe you're trying to clarify something, with them, or maybe you're trying to convey to them that a different layout is a little bit better than what they're asking for. But the most important thing is that you're going to end up having to translate what they're saying to you. And, it might be in the same language that you speak, but sometimes it is very difficult for people to articulate what it is they're looking for. So one of my favorite quotes is, "I'm an artist, I'm not a mind reader." But it's like you kind of have to become one. Let's see, I have a couple more comments over here. Lyric says, "Art is her expression." Yes, and you tend to see things in a different way for most people. It is absolutely, it is very, very much a mode of expression. I love to paint. I love my work as a graphic designer, as a graphic artist. So it's you think a coma would shut your brain off? Well, let's hope not. And LaShawn is asking if we have a resource list for jobs that you can do with a graphic. Oh, you had sent me an email about that video. I have not had a chance to watch that just yet. But you know what? I'll take a look. I'm going to copy this chat right now, and I'm actually going to shoot myself an email while we're talking. And I will look something. Oh, actually, Lyric has got one already. Wow, that was fast. There we go. I am going to email myself this either way, though, because maybe I can even find an additional one. There we go. This a kitty. There we go. And to answer your question, though, LaShawn, like I said, I had not had a chance to watch the video, I did actually have a chance to look at the images. And it's very possible that it was a graphic designer that did it. It's also, also possible that it was simply a fine artist because of the media. LaShawn is, actually, let me see if I can even bring it up real quick to show everyone if Outlook will be cooperative. Oh, no, it's actually not even over there. Hold on, let me see if I can find it over here. Hold on. Because I at least want to show the pictures. Where is it? LaShawn. Nope, that's not it either. Here it is. Here it is. Nope, actually that wasn't it either. Ah, here it is. There we go. And there we go. This is the one that LaShawn is talking about. So these paintings of some sort that are just unreal. It's got this amazing optical illusion there because of the perspective on them. And I had not had a chance to watch the video yet, but I had scrolled through these images. So the thing with this particular one, LaShawn, is that there's no text here, so there's no real message. It definitely is going to get people thinking, because I'm willing to bet that people actually do walk like that across them, because it messes with your head. So maybe the message is to just be careful or hurry across the street. I'm not sure. But yes, Christine, it actually very well might slow people down. People walking, driving across the street. So it's very, very, very interesting how it can actually convey that message without the typography, without the text. So just for those of you that are watching this and were wondering what the heck I was talking about. So let's see. Okay, just wanted to make sure. So we got technical skills, design skills, communication skills. And then the digital world of the design industry, which is kind of where we're going these days. Can any of you guys that are in here today think of some pros of the design world kind of becoming immersed in this digital age that we're in? Any advantages or benefits? Easy to find inspiration, absolutely. Portability and remote work, yep. I'm in my basement right now. So, that's a great, obviously I have an office, but yes, remote work reaches more people, absolutely. That's huge. You can reach anybody with an internet connection. Absolutely. Well, I work with a working internet connection anyways. How about cons? Any disadvantages to having the design industry becoming more digital? One definite disadvantage is that it can kind of detract from your interpersonal and communication skills, depending on how how you do. If you're a little bit more shy, it can actually hinder your ability to do that. More copied work, yep, that's always the possibility, an unfortunate possibility. The market too saturated with designers, that's also very, very possible. Harder to find originality, scammers, harder competition. Yes, all of these are absolutely legit concerns. So it is more difficult to kind of try to make yourself stand out. So it's really important that you do your research and then try to expose your work, or expose other people to your work as much as possible. And yes, and absolutely less interactive people skills. I can compose a really thorough email, and I have gotten to the point where I can communicate via phone. I can absolutely communicate in person. but it is very difficult because sometimes you forget that there's a human being at the end of those. So the different types of examples of design in the digital world, we have Behance and the other many different portfolios out there. Social media is huge. We learned about that last week with the banners that we were working on for the assessment. YouTube is also huge. I mean, how many advertisements do you see show up in the middle of your video? These kinds of things. You have advertisements on the side of Facebook, which is aggravating beyond all belief. But guess what? They employed a designer in order to create those things. So good on you. Okay, well, I am running so late. I am just yakking so much today. So we got Monday critiques. Let's see what I can do for a critique today. And that is going to keep coming up. Sorry, I got to just shut my email now because it's going to keep telling me that my password's wrong. Well, that's interesting. Christina over here says she has a mirror by the computer so that she can see how she's perceived by people that you're on the phone with. That's very interesting. Let's see, here we go. That's very interesting. And LaShawn says that she's pretty shy. So that the online thing is very much an advantage to her. It is, it has its benefits and it has its disadvantages. If I'm smiling, they'll be able to tell. Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with that, Christina. I can totally tell when people are smiling. Well, if I'm hearing them, I obviously can't tell if you guys are smiling right now. Critique has always been a touchy subject for me, so you need to get better. Oh, Lyric, don't, please. I know that it can be, but don't worry about it at all. It is very much I think I had mentioned it in one of my first lectures when we're talking about critiques. They're not critiquing you, and they're not even necessarily critiquing your work. It just may not be what they're looking for. Okay, and I know it's really one of those difficult things. I definitely had a difficult time with it myself initially, and was stressing myself out. I was totally taking it personally, and after a little while I realized, you know what, if I do this every time I get a job, I'm gonna have a heart attack by the time I'm 30. And I was kind of all set with giving myself that kind of stress. You take the feedback, you make the revisions, you move on to the next one, and it makes it so much easier and much more enjoyable. So we have, to start out, we have a Paul Rand. Let me go scroll. This is always the tricky part when I'm doing these critiques, because these are so big. So we have Paul Rand, who did a lot of kind of icon kind of work, flat style. We have some icons up here. We have in our little cookbook here too, which actually I'll zoom back in. You can see that the bottles here don't have any real definition. And we have, this, I don't know if this was maybe, whatever this was over here, obviously. I can't quite tell. A vegetable or a fruit, maybe, not sure. Whatever this was, maybe the top of jars. So you can see how he's kind of turned everything into almost geometric shapes. Even this kind of rounded area, he's made into these sharp angles. So that's the kind of work that he has a tendency to use. He does a lot of sans serif fonts. There are some serif fonts, which you can see here. This is probably like a Rockwell, I think, and actually he has it 4 different areas here. A lot more negative, well, not negative space. Yeah, negative space. We have this negative space right here. We have this big area right out back here for the sky, another one right here, and you can see that he kind of takes just a small area for his text. And obviously we have IBM, obviously this was a collection of IBM ads, so it all kind of had a very similar kind of feel to them anyways. So this individual kind of was going along the same lines. We're missing the text from the Word document, which let me just remind everyone where it is. Go to week 3 assignment. Okay, so it's going to be in this folder. And once you extract it or unzip it, depending on what kind of machine you are using, you should see 2 Word documents, designer choices and text. And the text is the one that you're going to use here. If it opens up. What was the website you gave us that sampled fonts and gave you something close to the same font? Are you thinking of my fonts maybe, Beth? The one that where I entered something to try to come up with the font? Defont.com is that's my favorite resource for all sorts of different, like when you're looking for something from like a particular category, or even just looking just around. My font is the one that, like, if you're trying to match a font. So we have, oops, my fonts. And right here, there's a what the font kind of thing. So if you actually have a sample of something, you can upload it here. So I think that's probably the one that you were talking about. So this right here is in the Word, one of the 2 Word documents actually in the folder, assignment, designer choices, and then text. And this text is the one the stuff that you actually need on your poster here. So this, like I said, this individual was kind of going in the right direction. They're working with some basic geometric shapes. They're all pretty flat. We could probably get rid of the stroke here because it doesn't look like he uses a ton of outline strokes. And we could maybe, you know, depending on the theme that this particular person is going with, maybe they're going with, you know, that the United States, that America is their home, and that's kind of they're working with the artists in their home. Or I don't know, maybe if that's kind of where they're going with this. So we could maybe put some text up here, or maybe work with the angle like they kind of were doing with this word right here. Maybe they would want to put the date and the location within the house, you know, in the pink area here. The website maybe could go on the bottom. So that kind of stuff. We do have, you know, quite a bit of negative space around here, just kind of like we have here. They do have a sans serif font. So this is a good start. We just need to work a little bit more on including the text that was provided. It does a little bit, Beth. It looks a little bit empty, but I think that really is mainly because most of the text copy wasn't there. So I think once this individual gets that text copy in, it'll start to kind of actually pull together. And it looks like in the chat, looks like we have some concerns over the assignment. Don't stress. Don't stress. That's what my feedback is for. I promise I will help. The color choices, stress over 2. And Beth, if you want to shoot me an email, you know what? Yeah, just shoot me an email reminding me, and I'll make sure that I make sure to critique yours. Okay? I'll make if I don't do it here. I think I probably have enough time to do maybe 2 more here, but that way I don't forget. Okay? And so I'll make sure I get in that. So we have our mood board here for Paula Scher, whoever did this one. We have a couple of images up top. We have a couple different samples of the typography and the color scheme here, color palette. Okay. And this particular, I actually looked this up because I didn't know if maybe this was a Paula Scher image, and because I have had students do that before, but what we're really looking for is for this whole poster to be in that style from the artist. And I don't think that this was actually hers. So this student obviously had the idea, or had a good understanding, that PolyShare used a lot of text. You can see in the images up here from the mood board, she kind of plays around with their layout. So in this one is more grid-like, where even though, you know, this one's kind of on this diagonal, and then the text going up here is a completely different diagonal, and you know, she has different sizes, and some of them are kind of negative, or excuse me, not negative, they're in a reversed kind of look. So you have the dark block with the yellow text reversed out. We have this funny little effect with the red diamonds, and she does a lot of really funky things with them. This one she made going all the way around in concentric circles. This one, they're kind of all over the place. You know, some of them are 90-degree angles, some of them are on maybe a 10-degree angle. Absolutely, Christina, all kinds of alignment. And there's tons and tons of text in her imagery. So this particular student could absolutely use the USA thing, absolutely. Could maybe even select the white in Photoshop and kind of remove it, so all we have is the words. Could maybe even arrange the artists' names, kind of like they started to do here with the fonts. You know, kind of neat. Looks like we need a little bit more room on the left-hand side and up top here, just so that it doesn't feel like it's kind of fallen off. I don't know. I think, oh, well, some of it, you know, she does look like she has kind of going off of the edges there. LaShawn says, the text that Polly uses in the mood board seems like the text implies lots of information and encompasses all types of things to be included. Could you clarify? I'm just not exactly sure what you mean by that. And I'll read Lyric's question at the same time. Do you have any questions for when we are not motivated or inspired by the artists we are supposed to emulate? Research, just continuing to research. I know that that's really tricky. Go back to the recording from last week where I talk about pulling items out of their work, writing it, you know, kind of work like brainstorming, kind of what is that called? They call word association. You're seeing sans serif fonts, write down sans serif fonts. If you're looking at a particular font, you know that it's Arial, Helvetica, Myriad, very busy, concentric circles, looks like a hurricane. Whatever kind of comes to mind as you're looking at their work. And sometimes the word association is actually huge, and because that can kind of create like a little train of thought and kind of put you in a completely different direction than you realize. So LaShawn says, different direction of the wording, when you tie that into the post in the museum, the style could be used to imply that there will be lots to see in the museum from different artists. Okay, that I absolutely agree there. There we go. That absolutely makes a lot of sense, that you could almost with the layout of the text here, that you could be, you know, going around in circles throughout the museum, but you're seeing something different every single time. You know, maybe the green text here is supposed to be one artist and the orange is another one. It brings you right back around. You know, that's a lot of her, I'm sorry, I keep scrolling back up and down. I don't want to make you guys dizzy. A lot of her work is very busy, and there's a lot going on in it. And then really, that's really that kind of sums up her work. And like the suggestion of the artist's names being like a crossword puzzle, yeah. And yes, Beth, it is very hard to focus on one thing there. So a lot of different directions, and that can be very tricky when you're first learning how to work with alignment. But that's where, you know, this assignment comes into play, where we're trying to figure this out. You know, we could maybe keep the word featuring up here, but then take all of these names. Where's my annotate tool? Get red. Let's give me pink. Maybe no, I don't want the eraser. Draw, thank you. Maybe we have here, and then here, and then here, and then here. You know, the only, well, not the only, one of the things that is tricky about this is trying to make sure that you don't make one any more important than another one, because they're all going to be probably equal in this particular exhibit. So these are just things to consider while you're designing. Where go, clear all the drawings. Something else to take a look at, you know, we have a lot of empty space here, which she doesn't typically do that. She typically fills up her space, and she sometimes will use photographs like the dancer guy, black and white photographs, and she does it in black and white, I believe, to make sure that you're focusing on the text and not the image. The image is supposed to just enhance it, you know. Some nice contrast here with the lighter yellow on the medium blue. The orange is a little bit more difficult to read. So we could probably use repetition and you make that one yellow as well, and that might be a little bit easier. So, you know, play around with the sizing, especially her. She's got a lot of contrast in her work specifically. So, so you know, we have a couple of different things there, and I'll just try to do one more quick because I know I'm running behind now. We have Saul Bass here, and it looked like I think I saw like 5 submissions with his stuff in it. He has a tendency to use a lot of reds, oranges, yellows, definitely black. He uses some silhouette kind of figures, and if you notice, a lot of them actually as well, he'll take, you know, an organic shape, something that's found in nature like a human, and he'll make it blocky, which is kind of an interesting thing. He has a lot of the kind of choppy sans serif fonts, although he does every once in a while also use a regular sans serif font. And he doesn't use a ton of type, which is very tricky when you're being given the text copy. You know, you can't just eliminate words just because you want to. So sometimes that's one of the challenges of being a designer, is trying to incorporate all those elements. A lot of his imagery is really simple. So we have some contrast here. We got the white on the black, white on the black, white on the red, and the black on the red. And we have our color scheme here. Okay, we have a couple of different examples of text. And this is all nice and kind of aligned like a grid. And this particular person used a font that's probably almost identical. If it's similar, I don't know if it's similar or if it's identical to what he usually uses, but they've actually done a really nice job here of filling in the space. And the line breaks here also kind of make sense, discovering design in America. Maybe we could bring that down to in America, but I think this is probably it could go either way, 50-50, you know, whether you put in America at the bottom or up on the second line here. A graphic design odyssey, so we use a little bit of contrast where the subheading is a little bit smaller. We have all of our artists kind of aligned here, right justified. He did that up here, except just the opposite, left aligned here. Okay. And an building image that's probably supposed to be a museum of some sort. And we could probably even make those outlines, those white outlines, actually red to kind of blend in with the background. So there's even less contrast with that. Although maybe this individual decided to go, oh, you know what, I'll make the white in here. I'll use these outlines to create repetition between the heading, the image, and the artists here. You know, who knows? I don't know what was going through the individual's head. Then we have right at the bottom here, we have the date and the location along with the website information. Maybe another thing that they could try instead is maybe getting rid of the outlines or making them red so that they blend into the background, but maybe instead making this what looks like maybe a window, and then maybe making the door in the window white. I don't have an image readily available to show you, but I know that there are samples of things like that. But they've done a great job of working with hierarchy, where we have the heading is nice and big, subheading is kind of medium. And then the artists are a little bit smaller. And then even contrast here at the bottom, because that was the information, the location and the date and the website, you know, so it looks a little bit different than from up here. We could probably do a little bit of something with the word featuring work, featuring work by to kind of differentiate between that and the artists. Maybe decrease the leading a little bit here in between those two lines. Italicize it, maybe an underline. I'm not even sure. You go, just looking at the comments. The poster for The Shining had to go through 300 versions before it was approved. Holy crap. I wonder if that was Stephen King's decision or if it was someone else's. I mean, he's an artist in himself, you know, by a completely different right, and he probably had an idea of what he really wanted. So one thing that you might change, slightly smaller font for a graphic design odyssey. Underline? No. Yeah, I mean, any of that's very possible, LaShawn. I probably would stay away from the underline just because that would actually bring your eye to it. Maybe you could do the underline up here. But, you know, absolutely small, it's a little bit smaller text could definitely work. The designer probably had a headache for the Shining poster. Yeah, and probably wanted to kill the director or the producers. Yeah, it can be very tedious. It can be very tedious. So let me actually make sure that I've covered everything. I know that I had another slide up here, but we might have actually gone over everything. Oh, this was just a review. So for anybody that is watching the recording here or is in class today that might be missing anything, this is essentially what we've worked on this year. We've had this mod. Assignment number 1 was the design period flashcards, 3 flashcards with the information on one side, with the image and the color palette on the back. Assignment number 1 had, assessment number 1, I gotta fix that, was the quiz. If you haven't taken it and you're looking to take it, let me know, because it's probably closed by now, but I could always look into opening it back up for anybody that's trying to make up work. Number 2 assignment was the advertising makeover for Sky Studios, where we picked one of the errors from the flashcards, and the assessment was the self-evaluation, the critique, and the design process. Last week was your mood board and your poster draft, which we were just working on the critique. And the assessment for the social media ads was for last week as well, those 3 banners. So tomorrow I'll try to do a little bit more critique, hopefully. I'll try to keep the demo for the Behance account pretty concise. So that's Tuesday, 12:30 p.m. Mountain Time. I don't know if anyone's schedules got screwed up from daylight savings yesterday, because I know that there is an area, I think it's Arizona, that they don't change the clocks back. So I don't know if any of my students are in that area, but if you are, please just make sure to keep that in mind. Now, I'm sure it's part of just what you do. But, you know, just keep that in mind. Hopefully we'll get to more critiques Thursday at 12:30. There are also chances for critiques if you would like me to specifically go over yours. I do too, Lyric and Beth. I'm exhausted. So I hate daylight savings time too. But the Thursday multi-session, if you need any other help, that's the last chance for advising. Do any of you ladies have any specific questions or comments before the end of the class here we have today? Sleep is all messed up. And you know what? I know that I have some students that are working like night shifts, so that's really gotta mess with them. Okay, I got 3 no's. You guys are also polite. Oh, well, good, Christina. I'm glad. And we got another no there. All right, well, we have tomorrow, we'll do the demo. Yeah, Beth, you work over it. And I feel like I think it's Taranza, I think her schedule is kind of towards the evening as well. It's tricky. It's tricky trying to get everything to fit in. So, so tomorrow, like I said, we'll do the demo. Maybe, hopefully, another critique. I mean, yeah, hopefully another critique or two. And I guess that is just about it. We'll work on getting everyone's portfolio set up. Second jobs at night at the house. Yeah, no kidding. Damn kids. All right, well, ladies, thank you so much for coming in today. You guys make the classes so much more interesting because then I don't have to blabber on just by myself. I get to go back and forth with you guys, and hopefully the videos, the recordings are a little bit more interesting for everybody else as well. I hope you all have a great day. Hopefully I'll see some of you tomorrow, and go get some rest, okay? Have a good one, everybody.